So good afternoon. I'm Stan Gerson, Dean of the Medical School. For those of you who are visiting and haven't been with us for a while, and welcome to the Health Education Campus again for alums who didn't grow up in this building. Our students are growing up in this building. It's an incredible place to have a medical education. I'm delighted that we have TJ Buratynski here celebrating her 30th year class reunion as a physician and giving the distinguished lecture, a topic that I'm actually quite excited about, which I will come to in a sec. So after graduating from medical school, she completed her internship in family practice and occupational medicine, followed by public health and policy at Johns Hopkins, and then took a turn to become general medical officer in the emergency medicine department in the Naval Hospital in Yokosuka, Japan, and then an aerospace medicine residency in the Naval Operational Medical Institute in Pensacola. Next stop was in Hawaii, in the Department of Aviation Medicine at the Naval Clinic. And then in 2001, became a flight surgeon for the U.S. Marine Heavy Helo Squadron, where she set up the standards for medical care and operational deployment for flights for pilots and to maintain the highest standard of medical residency for all of the units in the Naval Command. Following those stints, she served as a medical officer at the Naval Health Clinic in Hawaii, and in 2010 became the senior medical officer for the Task Force Keystone, where she was responsible for the operational deployment of the U.S. Navy Seabees to Afghanistan to conduct joint Army, Navy, Air Force general combat operations. Then in 2014, she shifted gears a little bit and went back to Hopkins to complete another postdoctoral fellowship in occupation and environmental medicine, furthered her training as a staff physician at the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, and then Battelle Memorial Institute right here in Columbus. Concurrent with those duties, she remains a deputy reserve surgeon for the Commander 6th Navy 6th Fleet and a medical officer for the Naval Medical Readiness and Training Headquarters in Bethesda. It's a pretty amazing list that I've just given you. I think you'd all agree, of service to our country and understanding the rarities that most of us are quite ignorant of aerospace medicine. So I look forward to her conversations and education for all of us. Thank you, TJ.
I was told it takes 10 seconds for this to come on. So do we need to turn this one off or we're good? Can everybody hear me? Great. Okay, so thank you all for joining us this afternoon. There's so many things going on in this campus. I appreciate you taking the time to come and hear a little bit about aerospace medicine and how I got to be there. So before I get started, I want to ask you all a couple of questions. Do we have any astronauts in the room? You never know, it's possible. Anybody who's been to space, paid your $1 million and got up there? Any private pilots? Private pilot, okay, you are part of this presentation now. And by the way, all of these fresh young faces that you see at the front table are all students or working with the Case Western Aerospace Physiology program that we have here. So the future of aviation medicine is before us today. I would also like to take a moment to introduce Drs. Michael Decker and Lisa D'Amato, who established and built the Aerospace Physiology program today. And I strongly encourage you to take a minute and meet them and talk to them. They've done amazing work, far beyond anything that I have ever done or hope to do. Brilliant people right here in your own backyard. And I'm supposed to have a clicker to move things forward.
Here's the next one.
Thanks. All right, so the basic disclaimer. I, TJ Buratynski, am here as a free agent. The thoughts, perspectives, opinions, and sometimes jokes are not representative of any agency, military organization, civilian organization, or government agency that may or may not be listening. Oh, and while I am a Case grad, these also are not representative of Case Western, although I have been heavily brainwashed by this university in a good way. Question policy. If you have a question, please ask. If you've got a thought or something that you'd like to contribute, an idea, please feel free to chime in. This is all a very open forum. We're a relaxed community here. We're amongst friends, except for the two hecklers who have already self-identified, Lewis and Bill. So let's just enjoy the hour of fellowship and exploration. So, to get us all on one page, whoops, I'm not moving in the right direction. All right, to get us on one page, let's define what aerospace medicine is. All right, so the key words are, it is a medical specialty. All right, it's a very niche of a niche medical specialty, and it focuses on health, safety, and performance of people who are involved in air travel and space travel. So this is what we go by. This is what we do. Now, let me ask you all another question. If you're standing in the mountains or someplace where there's not much light pollution, and you look up in the night sky and see this expanse of wonderment, is that what leaps to the forefront of your mind? Oh, this is what aerospace medicine is. Okay, maybe if you're an engineer, but for most of us, we're thinking, wow, just wow. You know, and I have to think of the old explorers who looked across the ocean on this planet and thought, what's out there? How can we get there? What will we discover? And we've changed our evolution as humanity. We have moved from looking just horizontally across to looking above and wondering, wow, what's out there and how can I get there? So I would like to introduce my perspective of what aerospace medicine is. Now remember, this is just me, TJ Buratynski, independent agent, but what we're really doing is taking what we know, what physiology we know, what engineering we know, what we know about the world we currently inhabit, or at least what we think we know about how our physiology works and the way we respond to exposures, and we are applying it to discover areas that we don't know. And we're discovering that some things we're learning we didn't even know we didn't know. You know, so it really is a new age of exploration. So what do you need to do to get on this ship and be part of this great exploration? Well, first step, get educated. Gather information so that you have a platform, you've constructed a launch pad in which to begin your journey from. Case Western was a great launch pad. You have all been so blessed to have had the opportunity to have been trained here or get trained here now, because some of the great minds, Mike and Lisa right here, who are great contributors, you have access to them. This is a team effort. Aerospace medicine is not just a doctor doing doctor things. You are working with engineers, you're working with pilots, you're working with psychologists, You're working with people who turn wrenches on aircraft or space shuttles. It's really a variety pack. You know, it's a system of systems collaborating to take our system to frontiers that we have never been to before. And I would say a third key ingredient to aerospace medicine is you've got to have some curiosity. You've got to be able to look out there and say, wow, I wonder what's out there. I wonder what it would be like to be in that environment, or how can I get to that environment? And as humanity, we as a culture of explorers, a tribe of explorers, you know, what are we going to find out there? How will we live in the stars? Can we live in the stars or other planets? And then can we continue the human race in space? Will we be able to reproduce in space? We don't know. These are things that we are considering. So how did I get on this trajectory? You know, most people haven't even heard of aerospace medicine. You know, I hadn't heard of aerospace medicine. You know, I hadn't even heard of occupational medicine until I got to Case. But, you know, I had a father who actually left high school to go fight in World War II, and he was an aviation mechanic. He had a love of aircraft, a love of flight, and the stories that he shared with me as a child. And many of you in this room, I know you guys are too young to remember this, you probably weren't born yet, but remember when we landed on the moon, Apollo 11, you know, and Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon. And it was one small step for man, one giant step for, those words live with us today. You know, so we are still in this process of taking steps and moving forward. Then there's the cultural influences that we have as children and what we're exposed to. You know, so space flight then became more mainstream. You know, one of my favorite role models, Miss Piggy, you know, from Pigs in Space. What a self-assured, confident female persona. You know, and they were having fun. They were joking and teasing, which is actually sort of the norm in the aviation and space community. Very serious about your professionalism, but you know, if you can't joke and laugh with each other, you're gonna have to see the psychiatrist about that. Did I break it already? Let's go back and then forward. And we're not moving forward. Can we go? Technical difficulty, these things happen from time to time. Oh, I guess I just didn't hit it right, thank you. All right, so then we get a little bit more mature, right? We get a little older, I should say older, you know, I'm not sure I'm qualified as being more mature. And we get introduced to Sally Ride. Sally Ride was the first American female into space. The third woman ever into space. Actually, the Russians beat us to it. The first woman in space was Valentina Tereshkova, who was in space in 1963. So, you know, we're moving forward. We're getting people into space and into space for extended periods of time. Then the development of the International Space Station in 1998. You might have to be my professional clicker. What are you?
It's just the large button in the middle.
Yes.
Just like that. I'm happy to stand
Maybe I'm
here
pushing.
if you'd like.
Okay. All right, so you would think with all of these inputs that I would have had this clear-cut picture of, I'm going to go do airspace medicine, right? I loved science. I loved adventure. Yes, my name is TJ, and I am an adrenaline junkie. You know, but that may not have been the case. So I just want to ask you all, how many of you knew what you wanted to do with the rest of your life when you were, say, 15 years old? Oh, see, there's hands in the air. You know, look at that. You know, how well planned you were. I'm not one of those people. You know, it's just not in my slide deck. Next slide, please.
I thought we were going to go to space.
Well, you know, it was coming. We grew up in that era. You know, and we are going to space more and more now. So my career path was not a rocket launch. It looked a lot more like this, kind of a labyrinth with a lot of circling around. As the Dean mentioned, I did my undergraduate at the University of Akron in honors program. Thought I was going to be a polymer scientist. That was kind of the rage. I liked science, and it seemed to be available, accessible to someone like me. I then did some time doing some graduate studies and research, right here actually, at Case Western. And then came to medical school on a Navy scholarship, which is really just the new form of indentured servitude. You know, they say, hey, well, we'll pay for you to go to medical school. You just got to sign away a few years of your life. It's a good deal, guys. If you can get it, take it. I strongly recommend. It beats coming out highly in debt, but you know what? I'd take on the debt for this education any day of the week. It's worth it. Internship in family medicine, and then, and actually I want to go back a sec. When I was here at Case, during my third year rotations in family medicine, I was at Metro General, where I met Dr. Kathy Fagan. Kathy Fagan actually is an occupational and environmental medicine physician. I had no idea that there was a specialty of medicine in occupational and environmental medicine. And she introduced me to the environmental human interface of medicine. We had a family with mercury exposure. You know, the impacts of health in a community in Cleveland where there was still a rendering plant right there in the community. It's like, how would you like to live a block away from a rendering plant and live with those fumes? So that introduced me to occupational medicine, and I thought I had found my niche. It was expansive, it was collaborative, and it was going to be something different pretty much every day because people do all kinds of jobs. They have all kinds of exposures. So it let me experience the impact of a person's health status and their job environment and how those both affect each other. Because you can't have a healthy person working in an environment that's actively trying to make them sick and expect them to succeed. Then the internship in family medicine at Oklahoma, I was fortunate to meet Dr. Roy DeHart, who was one of the forefronts of aerospace medicine and aviation medicine. Wonderful man, heart the size of Texas. You know, and introduced me to this aviation medicine, this niche within occupational medicine. And then getting called to Yokosuka, Japan with the Navy, they showed me that the Navy has this program in flight surgery, you know, where they actually pay you to fly as a doctor. And you get to go to everywhere in the world and meet all kinds of people who are doing all these strange and fascinating things and work with them and treat them and be their doc. So it's like, what is not to love about that? All right, so I got picked up for the aerospace medicine residency program, and the residency is actually a full 3-year residency, 2 years beyond internship. For the first year after internship, you go and get your master's in public health. They were willing to pay for me to go to Johns Hopkins, which is a great program. And in your second year is an assortment of clinical rotations. It's familiar territory to most of you. You're getting ear, nose, and throat exposure, you're getting ophthalmology, internal medicine, you know, all the classic medical specialties that we're all so very familiar hearing about. But then there's that special aerospace medicine aspect to it. And yes, they actually paid me money to do this stuff. I was amazed. So you're learning about things that you don't hear about in internal medicine or, ophthalmology, because doing these things in an extreme environment changes the rules. So the physiology that we know for people on the ground is a little different when we want to put them in an extreme environment. When you're driving, you get gravity experiences going forward and backwards, sometimes left and right, not much up and down, and certainly not up and down while going left and right and forward and back at the same time. The body's going to respond differently. Your visual cues change. Your vestibular complex just gets messed up, okay? We're not meant to move in all of those directions at the same time. So you're getting exposure to these extremes. You get training in hyperbaric medicine and the human-machine interface. Because if we're asking people to go fly these planes or get in this space shuttle or go live in the International Space Station, how do they interact with their machine, and how does that machine interact with them? When you're sea level 1G, you're normal to that. This is where we live and breathe every day. But when I take you out of that comfort zone, and maybe your oxygen level is a little low, maybe your stress is a little high, and then I ask you to put on a suit and go out into an environment that you can't live in without that suit and work on something, how are you going to do it? Oh, and the other part of this training, I referred to it as the carnival rides. So the picture that you're looking at, we affectionately refer to as panic in a can. And this is the mock-up of an airplane fuselage, usually a helicopter is what they model it after. And it's completely safe. There are rescue divers in the water waiting if you need them. Well, they put you in this, and you're in your flight suit, and they're in your boots, and it's hovering on cables over a pool of water, a swimming pool that's, deep. And then they just dump you, fuselage and all, into this water, and they tell you, wait until all motion comes to a stop before you try to egress, to get out. And you're thinking, if this happens in the ocean, we're not going to stop until we're on the bottom of the ocean. How the heck am I going to get out then? So it's really what they meant to say was wait until all violent motion stops and then egress, because you don't want to get clipped by any rotating helicopter blades when you're trying to get out. So you get to have this wonderful experience of tons of water rushing up your nose while you're trying to unbuckle from your seat and get out a window. And then you get to do it again blindfolded. It's just, how could it get any more fun than that? Next slide, please. All right, so do you have to do a full residency in aerospace medicine to learn about aviation medicine, space physiology, and the things that change? And the answer is no. And actually, I'd like to turn it over to Michael, if you would please.
Oh, we can come up here, sure.
Yes.
Just before we begin, this is an air sickness bag that we fly with. Mine's still there, hers is not. So I'm Michael, Dr. Decker, Dr. D'Amato. We've been engaged with Department of Defense and NATO research since 2014. And you see us here at Vance Air Force Base after we completed one of our sorties. As we've been working with the Navy, Air Force, and other groups, people have said to us, there is no pipeline for the future. We need students trained in medicine, trained in physiology. We need a pipeline. So can Case Western Reserve create a program in aerospace to begin providing that pipeline of students. We said, yes, we think we can do this. Our colleagues in the Pentagon, all of our stakeholders met with us and said, we will help you develop the curriculum that we think students need to know. And beginning in 2018, we began to develop a program based on what our stakeholders wanted. We then brought the concept here to Case Western, worked with Dr. Dean Gerson, who was very supportive, but he gave us a challenge because many people want to develop new programs. So he said, convince us that this is necessary, convince us this is worthwhile, and if you can build this while you're writing research grants and papers, we'll support you. Nothing brings a team together like a challenge like that. So Dr. D'Amato worked to get our program approved, presented it to the state of Ohio, and when the state of Ohio looked at this, they said, there is no program in the United States right now that does this. And the only program close to this is King's College in London. So we're going to support this program so that you can build a pipeline. So we've just begun the program. It really has grown out of our research. Our curriculum is focused on what happens to the human body under extreme environments. It's physiology, it's anatomy, it's human factors, it's
aviation mishaps.
Aviation mishaps. We have an on-site residency that our students come to us. We take them to Wright-Patterson. We take them to NASA. This past summer, I wasn't there, but you conducted an analog space mission. So we train our students with real hands-on experiences. We put them in our hypobaric chamber and take them to altitude. Our first class started a little bit late, a couple students. This year, we already have 13 new master's students, and we're now opening enrollment for the winter time because more students are reaching out to join the program. Course content, we develop most of the course content ourselves. We do have invited speakers, our colleagues from NATO, the different aerospace physicians from around the world come in and lecture. So we have those lectures that makes the program unique. And now what people are asking us is, can we build a residency? 8 other universities are now blueprinting our program. Johns Hopkins is trying to create a residency, and so is Harvard. And people have said to us, you guys are leading the field. Can you make an aerospace residency at Case Western Reserve? So with that, we'll sit
Yes.
down and then have maybe some discussions later. Anything else, Sparky?
Nope, I was going to just say there, the logo on the little, I don't know, whatever you call that thing is, the little arch that we're standing below says, no guts, no glory. And that was built by one of the pilots who took us up in the plane.
Yeah, we've flown 6 times now, but really to understand hypergravity, you have to fly at hypergravity. And that's what we've been able to do and convey to our students.
Thank you. Yeah, so Case really, in true Case fashion, is once again in the lead and forefront of designing training programs and educational opportunities for us to move the frontier further. So what do you do when you're an aerospace medicine doc? Do you still see patients? I mean, do you still be a doctor? You know, and yes, the options for practicing medicine are multiple and varied. So you are seeing, you know, you can see patients in a flight medicine clinic, you know, pilots that fly aircraft, you know, you've all flown Delta, American, United, Swiss Air. They all need to be an annual physical exam and medical clearance in order to maintain their license and flight status. You can work in aeromedical evacuation. So here, not even just talking space, when people are injured or ill, if they've been in an accident, especially in remote areas, how do you get them to a medical center safely? If you've stabilized them on site, you know, they can still destabilize in air. So what criteria need to be met by both the aircraft and the patient to be able to move them? Research that's going on right here at Case Western Reserve, studies in human physiology and how we work. You know, in flight, in different G, when we talk about G, that means gravity forces. In different gravity G and force environments or no G environments. And then space agencies. You know, there's NASA, there's SpaceX, there's Blue Origin. You know, and as we grow and make space travel more accessible, there's going to be a greater and greater need for this, because we're moving beyond where it's just our finely tuned astronauts and our healthy aviators who are going up into these environments. It's people who just buy the ticket and want to go, and I suspect they'd like to be able to survive the trip there and back again. You know, so how do we screen them? What are the criteria? You all are part of designing that now. You know, so us supporting our next generation to be able to have these opportunities and move the human race forward and upward. So yes, we see patients, yes, we practice medicine inside and outside of the typical clinic. Most of the best stories happen outside of the typical clinic, by the way, in case you were wondering. Your patients are not just the astronauts, not just pilots, anyone who is a member of the crew, your flight attendants for flight, people who maintain the aircraft or maintain the shuttle, you know, and oftentimes their families as well will end up coming to see you as their medical provider. So basically what we're doing is we are taking care of the physical and psychological needs of people who do amazing work in conditions that humans were not designed to survive in. We need them to be able to perform to optimal or even higher than optimal standards, because if they are not able to perform, the outcomes can be catastrophic. All right, so where are we moving forward to? Challenges and unknowns. Remember, so we're taking what we know and what we think we know, and we're applying it to environments and conditions that we don't have knowledge of, we have no experience in. So looking at things like seat design and safety, you know, body positioning, you know, just from going like this to like this makes a significant difference in how the body can handle those G forces. The mission to Mars. You know, we are going, you know, it's an inevitability. We are going to Mars. Can we make the trip there and back again safely and intact? You know, the exposures to radiation, the exposures to microgravity. You know, we haven't even begun to really sort out what is happening to our own microcosm of bacteria and microbes that live within our body that we have a symbiotic relationship with. You know, the space tourists that we talk about, the people who have laid their $1 million down because they want to go into space, you know, well, how do we manage somebody with a history of congestive heart failure, or maybe somebody who's had a stroke or heart attack in the past, or maybe they've got diabetes, or maybe their body parameters don't fit the current seat designs that we have, but they're still going, you know, and Blue Origins or Mr. Musk has decided that, yeah, they deserve a seat to go up too. How do we accommodate for that? And what are we going to learn from that? You know, because everyone who goes brings back data from the unknown to the known. So, and then there are questions we have not yet asked. If you could click it once, please. So that, oh no, go back. That's the bottom button, yeah. So we don't know what we don't know. What are we going to encounter when we get out there? You know, astrobiology. All right, Katie, you have an undergraduate degree in astrobiology, right? So yeah, who knows, are we going to meet ET? Are we going to meet, you know, the alien Independence Day types of non-friendlies? You know, or what if they're not even aliens that we can see? What if they're new forms of viruses or microbes? You know, or a nanoparticle that is going to come and integrate into us and do things that we haven't even begun to imagine to our physiology. You know, we think microplastics are a problem. Who knows what nanoparticles from space can be? So in summary, I would just like to wrap up saying that aerospace medicine and exploration is a dynamic and evolving medical specialty. All right? It incorporates multiple aspects of traditional medical practice fields, and it's very much a collaboration among people who practice medicine, who research medicine, who work in engineering, who work in human behaviors. You know, it's very much it's a hodgepodge. You know, it's a big tossed salad that somehow makes things work. And it requires that collaboration to get us there. You know, I need a safety person to tell me, no, you can't do that. You know, in the Navy, we have what's called NATOPS, which is our guide for aviation medicine. And we all know that NATOPS is written in blood, because the way we learned what we can and can't do is from the mishaps that have happened before us. You know, so we've learned what the flight envelope is for both the machine and the human operating the machine. There are multiple pathways and introductions to aviation and space medicine. You know, so yes, if you've already done a residency, come on back and do another one. You know, join the aerospace physiology program. You know, keep learning, keep expanding your dreams, your aspirations, you know, and doing it in a fledgling field. You know, aerospace medicine is infantile, really. And you are part of co-creating the way ahead. You're laying the groundwork and foundations for the movement forward. And again, you don't have to join the military to get into aviation medicine. There are civilian opportunities, both in training and in practice outside of it. And, you know, so why would companies want to get into NASA? This was a question that we had brought up over lunch. And so I just did a quick search in the car on the way over. And there was a report that came out in 2023 looking at the impact of NASA. You know, when I was a kid growing up, the biggest impact NASA brought for me was Tang. Does anybody remember Tang, the orange breakfast drink? Right, so we got Tang. You know, all these years of research and, you know, lots of money to send astronauts to the moon, we got Tang. Well, in 2023, the report said that NASA has provided about a $75.6 billion with a B dollar economic output to the U.S. economy and created over 300,000 jobs in the U.S. economy. That GPS system that you have in your car, thank you, NASA. Satellite communications, thank you, NASA. And this, I think, is still debatable, but improved weather forecasting. Thank you, NASA. You know, enhancements to solar panels, you know, and having a greener impact on our home planet. Thank you, NASA. You know, so the impacts of physiology, and when I say aerospace physiology, what we're learning and how the body responds, are we bringing that back to how we can practice medicine here? And I say yes, emphatically yes, because humans work in every environment possible on this planet. If you've ever, you know, occupational medicine, people who weld pipes, you know, at 200 feet below the surface of the sea. You know, people who are up on mountains installing cables, people who work in observatories at altitude. You know, Mauna Kea Observatory is at over 13,000 feet. You know, the air's a little thin up there. You know, and you get a call, you know, in the evening, it's always, you know, after supper at about supper time. You know, hey doc, we got a guy, I think he's having a stroke. You need to come, you need to check this out. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And it's like, you know, he's up at the observatory and he's trying to fix a pipe leak, and he keeps telling us that no matter how many times he cuts it, it's still too short. You know, this is hypoxia. You know, so you don't have to go to to space or be in an aircraft to experience low oxygen and how that's impacting you. And you need to bring these people down. You know, so space physiology is helping us learn in a focused manner the limitations to human physiology, the modifications that we can make to human physiology and to the human environment to allow us to expand even what we do here on our planet, and to do it in a safe manner with enhanced performance outcomes. Next slide. So I would just like to leave you with a suggestion to please, whatever you choose to do with your career or with your life, to stay curious. Keep looking up at that night sky, whatever that is for you. Look up and wonder and think, what if, and how can I? How can I contribute? How can I grow? How can I learn more? You know, what makes this world go round? And how can I be a better part of it? Oh, we're not done yet. We got a couple more. But thank you in advance for that. Thanks for the warm-up. I would also encourage you to remember to stay humble. You know, when I look out and I realize I'm so small, and this is vastness beyond my imagination. And I would invite you to remember what William Brinkley said: always consider the possibility that you may be wrong, especially when you are absolutely certain you are right. You know, that might not work for teenagers, but I think most of us should be able to appreciate that statement at this point. Next slide, please. And I would invoke you to maintain courage. Courage to explore what is out there, and explore what is in you that wants to drive you forward, and step up to that call. Explore new ideas. Explore applications of old ideas. Explore different perspectives. Collaborate with the person across the hall that you've seen coming and going, but you've never actually spoken to. You know, go across the quad and engage with the engineering department. You know, the social work department and human factors. You know, there's a talk tomorrow on trauma-informed counseling and leadership. You know, and how that affects the brain and our neuroplasticity. And the courage to admit that there's always going to be more that we don't know than that we do know, and that we need to keep exploring. And now the last slide. I would leave you with a remembrance of being grateful. Sir Isaac Newton told us, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." And I have been blessed to stand on the shoulders of giants, people like Fred Robbins, who was my mentor when I was here in medical school, Kathy Fagan, who introduced me to occupational medicine, Roy DeHart, who got me into aviation medicine, my father, who introduced me to a love of flight and aircraft. You know, and gratitude for this wonderful planet that is our shared spaceship catapulting us through space on a daily basis, and is our platform, our launch pad to go beyond into the unknown. Thank you very much. Any questions for myself or aerospace medicine physiology members, or Dr. D'Amato and Dr. Decker? Yes.
Since you mentioned quite a few government agencies, I was wondering if USU is doing any work or collaborating with CASE or any of the universities in aerospace medicine?
I'm sorry, who is?
USU, the military medical school?
Oh, USUS. Yeah, okay. Mike, you might be able to answer, because they're not really collaborating directly with
We
us.
don't collaborate. We know each other. They've accepted some of our students, but they're really a separate medical school, so there isn't an interactive research opportunity there. Oh, well, thank you very much. So the short answer is not yet, but we're working towards that in the future.
Behind you.
So it's well known now that our microbiome influences our entire behavior. There's been very little published about what should have been results of the collections of many space flights and at least colonic
Flora.
content, which it precedes my really big question about brain function in space and how we're monitoring cognitive behavior. So I would appreciate any reflections you have on that. But are we to the point where we need to have fecal transplants available in space in a way that we can monitor consecutively colonic, colonic
Shifts in the colonic, in the gut microbiome. So that, I think, is a great question, and I would like to have answers to that myself, personally. I haven't seen publications on it, so these are my thoughts. Again, this is just my thoughts associated with no government agency. So yeah, we go with our microbiome that we have. We don't know what happens to that microbiome in space. I know that I can change the microbiome here in myself on Earth with my stress level, my hormone level, and whatever my next meal is going to be. So how are we accommodating that, the fiber needs, because it's the fibers that we ingest, our soluble fibers, that are feeding our gut microbiome, and they in turn are making products that we need, that our enterocytes need, and that the rest of our body needs to function optimally. The other question that I have for that, it's an interesting idea about the fecal transplants in space, but how are those protected from the same environment that we're trying to protect our humans from? How is the radiation exposure and the microgravity fields going to affect not only us, but the microbiome that we carry? And how can we accommodate for that? I don't know. I don't think we've answered that question yet. Do you have anything on that, Mike?
Yeah, I see if I can have a microphone. This is a lot of what we're funded.
Here, you want just mine?
That's okay.
It's right here.
So that was actually a great question, and most of what I didn't say earlier is Dr. D'Amato and I were also 50% Department of Defense for the last 6 years. So we've maintained laboratories at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. There we have a 3T machine set up, and we're specifically looking at the impact of hypogravity, hypergravity, and hyperoxia on the brain. So most of the work that we're funded to do have been addressing the issues that you're looking at. The issue right now with the space station is we now have a 21% oxygen environment, but the stepping outside inside the space suit, they're depressurized to about an altitude of 29,000 feet with 100% oxygen inside. And what we're seeing in many people are white matter hyperintensities. So the issue is now becoming, is oxygen leading to some sort of scarring, something else is happening? We've seen this in the U2 pilots, all this is published. So these questions are being addressed, but they're very timely. And getting to the microbiome, that's another project that's happening down at Wright-Patterson that I won't talk about right now, but again, is something that people are thinking about and trying to address.
Just a real quickie, the hyperintensity white matter
Yeah.
findings are classic in chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yes, right. I was in the CDC in the chronic fatigues branch. Yeah.
You wonder if those kinds of changes are.
Well, and we've thought about that. We're scanning people before they go up, and we're scanning them when they come back. So we're seeing the hyperintensities only in the people who are stepping outside into spacesuits. But we're also seeing mild levels of chronic neuroinflammation that lasts for about 6 months. But yeah, the fatigue literature is loaded with that. We also see hyperintensities in sleep apnea, hypertension, and other issues, but we don't see them typically in 29, 30-year-old healthy people. Yeah, well done.
Great talk,
meet you halfway.
TJ, on a terrific topic. 2 quick questions. Is there a board certification for aerospace? And-
Yes.
Okay, there is. And then the second question is, how about organizations like OSMED who are kind of in this space, and what are your thoughts of those kind of organizations for folks that are getting involved in this?
Getting involved in what way do you mean?
Aerospace medicine.
Well, I hadn't. You're catching me unprepared, I'll confess. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
I don't know that group.
Did he say asthma?
No, OSMED.
I don't know who they are.
They collaborated with us last year at a conference, and they had about 50 or 60 people in Maui. They were a lot of fun. Seemed like a fun group.
We only get sent to the really rough places. They never send us to
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, we don't know that group.
Okay.
Quick questions. As the spouse of a nurse, I'm just curious. Case has got one of the few flight nurse programs in the country, and I'm just wondering how nursing is it at all tied in with any of this, and what would that role be?
Yes, actually, a friend of mine that I serve with in the Navy is a flight nurse. Key roles in aeromedical evacuation. A lot of times it'll be a flight nurse that is actually transporting with injured patients as well. And again, in an aerospace medicine, it's still wide open. So a flight nurse working into aerospace medicine, Lisa, your background is in nursing.
As is Michael's.
Yeah, yeah.
Graduate of FPB, my undergrad.
Yeah, so it's wide open.
And my second question: what are your thoughts as a retired Navy captain about the Space Force and how that relates to everything that you're...
Okay, so there's a little bit of disclosure. I'm not quite retired yet. I thought I was going to be by the time I got here today. The whole Space Force development, there's been a little bit of contention. Let me just say, there's been a little contention. And, we're figuring roles out, and people being people, everybody's looking for their piece of the pie. So it remains to be seen how the dust is going to settle. Is that it? And are we a wrap? Thank you very much. Right on time.